I use this when I'm stressed or something. There's a charm hidden inside, and it's right there, and it's a little fish. And this, I got it for my birthday, and I used to have eyes and a mouth, but then it rubbed off, and it's a lion.
What does anxiety mean to you?
It's like when you have emotions about what's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Emotions. Yeah, we have lots of emotions about what's going on around us, eh?
And you get like really nervous and you're worried about what's gonna happen.
Okay, nervous and worried.
And when you have butterflies in your stomach and you feel like really scared to do something.
Okay, yeah, sometimes you do feel
Yeah,
it
you get
physically.
anxious
Like
about it.
When
Yep.
you're presenting, like if you're doing a speech or something.
So when you're practicing it at home in front of your parents, not quite so anxious, but then...
No.
And then what happens when you get up in front of the class?
It's like butterflies go everywhere. and like
They just burst out.
like bubbles up inside you.
Even thinking about it can...
Yeah.
I try not to think about it until I'm doing it.
Right, because even thinking about it can sort of build up that
Yeah.
anxiousness and that nervousness.
Yeah. Just kind of think you're in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
Everyone's invisible.
And that's what we see a lot in the literature, is that overthinking word that you said, anxiety, is sometimes about not being able to turn off that problem solving. So you just keep trying to problem solve and keep trying to problem solve. And sometimes you can't solve the problem.
Because words go all through your mind. You're just like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna laugh? Are they gonna do this or this or this?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of got to clear your mind and just think you're alone. Just think everyone's invisible.
Right, yeah.
And like
that's your strategy?
no one will make fun of you.
Right.
Yeah.
So feeling anxious is often
Yeah.
about reaching out to our friends and our
Yeah.
loved ones and our family.
Yeah.
It just helps you to stop feeling alone, eh? Sometimes anxiousness is just about feeling alone.
Anxiety is like more about how it's yourself, but as soon as you tell somebody your problem, it like the weight comes off your shoulders a bit, and it feels a bit. It doesn't feel as bad when you, because usually it's like writing. When you say it out loud, you find your mistakes. So if you say your problem, you might think, oh no, it's not actually that bad, or oh, there is a solution.
Yes, okay.
Right, so what's the rules? We need to, the children go first. What?
Yeah, yes.
I need to set out the wild cards.
What?
Children always come first, don't they?
They're completely opposite. So we've got two kids. Mieke is a
She's
8-year-old now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just had her 8th birthday.
Yeah.
And Alex, who's 6, and the keepers on it, and they're complete opposites, which is fantastic. So,
Alex is pretty outgoing and easy, and
yeah, just
whatever comes
as
happens.
cruisy as you like.
Mika's not. Mika's pretty anxious.
She's a perfectionist, but she also will give up too early, so that's not a good mix. She'll try something once, and when it doesn't go perfect.
Yeah, and then she gets pretty upset at herself that she hasn't done it, and she worries, and that's when the hair pulling comes out.
Yes.
How many sides does an octagon have?
What's an octagon? Oh,
A shape.
8.
Well done.
Nailed
Good
it.
job. Yep, you got that one right.
First I thought it was 6, but no, it's a bigger number, so I just...
Yeah, well done.
So you just...
Yeah. Mika started pulling her hair before she was 2. She started going bald on one side, and I sort of thought, oh, that's a bit strange. She wasn't bald before. And I watched her, and she'd sit, and she'd just use her fingers, and she'd just wrap them and rip and wrap and rip, and there'd be hair all over her
You can
pillows.
hear the ripping. It was
Oh,
that bad.
it was awful. There doesn't seem to be a trigger, like a straight timeline of something, but she did have quite a traumatic start to life, and then she was quite sick as a baby.
And looking back, it's so obvious why.
Yeah.
She had so many... well, there was the earthquake, obviously. She was born...
3
she
weeks.
She was a harbinger of the earthquake almost.
She was 3 weeks
Quite,
old
but,
when the earthquakes happened, and I was put to sleep to have her. That was a bit of a stressful time, and then she was diagnosed with failure to thrive. She got pneumonia, and then we had the second earthquakes, and then in that time we lost our house and I lost my job. That's where clearly things were very stressed. Like it took Mieke and I were in the city centre next to the CTV building. I remember standing in the middle of the road holding her thinking, my baby's covered in dust and there shouldn't be this dust and what am I supposed to do now? And there was just clouds and screaming and sirens and noises, and it took us 8 hours to get to Stephen. There was a lot of people who helped us, which was really amazing, and had gone home to our house but had to wade through liquefaction to get Mieka's medication.
It was way steep just getting back to the old house.
Welcome to life, Mieke.
The expression often used is that build a lifetime in the first 1,000 days. Your brain will take what it experiences in the first 1,000 days as a good indication of what your life's likely to be like for the rest of your lifespan and give you a brain ready for a lifetime full of what you experienced in the first 1,000 days. Now, we see that especially in Christchurch, and that's understandable that we'd have a higher percentage because of the earthquake. And if you understand the first 1,000 days and how you're adapting to that environment, if you were born just after the earthquake, you've been adapting to a trauma environment. That's why Scandinavian countries spend all their taxes in the first 1,000 days. It's why they pay the parent to stay at home in the first, 80% of their salary to stay at home in the first year. It's not just a warm, fluffy thing about babies. They build less prisons, they have less suicide, they actually ultimately spend less money by investing more money in the first 1,000 days.
And looking back now, I'm like, oh my goodness, there was so much that happened to her in the first 1,000 days of her life that I'm surprised that she functions at all, to be fair. I'd had a car accident and it was quite bad, and I was, there was lots of court and police and things, and so she saw that and she worried for a long time when she started school that I wouldn't pick her up. And that time I got made redundant and there was lots going on. So it was probably a really stressful time for us, let alone being a 6-month-old baby who was already sick and seeing specialists.
It's a bit difficult trying to be a normal family in these times.
But even outside of Christchurch, we have more anxious children. And I think that is because, you know, I mean, it's speculation now as to why we have more anxious children, but I think a huge part of it's got to be a lack of, we lost an at-home parent. You know, when you look at risk and resilience factors, resiliency factors are the things that are going to make your child turn out well. We're making pancakes for breakfast, so how good are you making pancakes, Jack? Okay, what do we need for this?
Milk.
Miraka. We had a fatal flaw in the plan. I think because the thing I always wanted to be was a dad, so yeah, whānau time is really important to me. I think because once you've got a strong family unit, then wherever you are, and no matter how spread out you are, and no matter how far apart you are, essentially you know you're there in an instant for each other emotionally, and that's really what it's about. But I really enjoy the times when I get all the kids together and the moko together at the same time.
That's a little bit gluggy. To describe my dad in one word, I'd probably say different. I think sort of growing up, everyone said, oh, you're like your dad, you guys are quite similar, but then I'm sort of like the rugby player, sort of what you think of, and Dad's very much the drama sort of person. And I guess he sort of correlates that over to work as well. If you've ever seen him go talk, he's always quite expressive.
And be introduced to the topic. So I spent like about 14 years working as a child counsellor, working with kids in therapeutic settings, and that was mainly kids with extreme behaviour and kids that experienced trauma. It was the 1990s, and a lot of the information about the brain started to come through really thick and fast in the 1990s. That's what that first talk was about, the first 1,000 days. What we learned in the 1990s is that the human brain is genetically and biologically designed to interact with the environment in the first 1,000 days of its existence to see what sort of brain it's going to need for the rest of its life. Down here, I think we got attached to your hoverboard. My family feed my mahi because in lots of ways my family are my mahi. You know, like nurturing and how to bring the best out of children and how to reach potential, and even as a counsellor, conflict resolution, like all of that is in the family. So I think because I had children young, I think like I started practically and then added the theory and the academic research because I was already a teenager. I was a dad when I started my university studies. I think my children have been a huge part of my journey because they've kept it real for me the whole time. It's always been about, well, what does that mean in real life? And I think that's a lot of what my job is now, is taking that complex academic stuff and saying, well, what does this mean in real life? And I think that's a lot of that's down to my children and that practical experience.
I like reading a lot, and there's lots of books down there. My bed's very comfy, and we only moved into my house last year in January.
Come on, we're just baking.
How do I do it?
Well, with the instructions, I've disappeared. We're going to start with the flour anyway.
Control over her food, that's a big one.
Yeah,
especially as she's gotten older,
definitely.
she's realised that she can control food and just choose not to eat.
That's her control in life. If she feels out of control and everything else, she will control her diet.
Like her favourite food is rice, and then she likes vegetables and whatnot. But as soon as you make fried rice and mix it together, no, that's out of her control.
She doesn't like.
Because she wants them separate, so she can control what to eat. It's really quite bizarre.
She's very she like when she chooses what to eat. It will be, if she's in that phase of using that to feel better about herself, it will be bread, rice, pasta, anything white, and it can't be
noodles.
Anything with flavouring she won't touch. I just don't want to make an issue with food. So we've tried really hard not to, and I really hope as a teenager that she knows food is for fuel, to help her grow and to help her learn, and not to control how you feel about your body. Mix it all up.
Looks like vanilla.
I guess we don't really know any different, do we?
We can see different with Alex.
Yeah, we can, but raising her, there's no difference. She's Mieke. She's always been slightly anxious, and I guess that changes our parenting style, maybe.
I'm a little bit more mindful of it in regards to what I say to her, and if she is having a tantrum, I give her a few minutes, and then I find the best approach is just to sit down and have a Daddy Mieke talk, and we just sit down and talk about how she's feeling, and that often gets the job done, doesn't it?
Yeah, whereas she won't talk to me. She needs a lot more time if it's me around.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why. She will eventually talk to me, but she prefers to speak to you when she's feeling like that.
Just have a cuddle and a big hug and just have a yarn about how she feels and what can we do to make her feel better. And it's not ice cream, but more things along the lines of just
time.
Reading a book. Oh, let's go outside and ride your bike for a bit. And
that's it. Well done. What? Done. Look at that. Well done.
Yeah.
It's hugely important, but te ao Pākehā is also hugely important to me. They're two aspects of my life that make up who I am. So it's easy to facilitate te ao Pākehā because that's the dominant culture. So I suppose te ao Māori is important to me because I want my children to grow up in a world where that culture and that language is thriving, where we have the diversity of multiple languages and multiple perspectives. Because I know that through that diversity is where you really get human creativity and original human thought, and that's the way of the future, really. I'd love to take everyone into a marae-based kaupapa. I'd like to see all of my work mould into one and that everybody gets this, because I think what's good for Māori is good for everybody. So yeah, I'd love to be in a Māori environment that is a holistic environment that's about doing what education was meant to do in the first place, helping people to reach their full potential. And I think marae is a perfectly suited place for doing that. Whenever people ask me, so why do you do this job? What is it that drives you? When I try to articulate it, it just comes out sounding really cheesy and corny, and really the truth was because most of the social workers I dealt with when I was a foster kid myself, I thought, you've got no clue what to do, and it'd be so easy to come in and do it better yourself. So that was a big part of the driving motor force too. most people of this generation, especially in New Zealand and Australia, don't fully appreciate that what that means is how brainy you are right now is not just driven by the genes or the whakapapa that you inherited. That might make up around a 50%. And children that come from loving, secure environments where they were indulged and held in what Māori call that ahuru mōwai, that, little paradise, then that keeps the child's survival brain so calm because they're so, looked after. That gives them a biology or the biological information from the environment to bring all of brain number 4, this frontal cortex, online, the brain that allows us to focus our attention, have empathy, higher intelligence, all the good stuff. Is it easy to spot when a child's having trouble with anxiety? No, that's not that easy to spot. It's usually their parents that's the expert on that, basically, because they're the expert on that child. They're the one that lives with them day in, day out. They've got an understanding of what's typical and what's now, bordering into not so typical. Oftentimes, actually, the child just verbalises it and they will be telling you, I don't want to do that, that scares me, that gives me a sore tummy. Constantly worrying and over-preparing for things. Being really adverse to any type of risk-taking, any type of new situation. Repetitive behaviours. We're always looking for a cluster of things, so it's very hard just to sort of give a tick-box list for, a tick-box list for what is anxiety. It's about a cluster of behaviours and it's about the subjective experience of the child and it's about what the parents are reporting to us.
We had to prepare Mieke this morning. We just told her we were going out. She had a lot of questions about where we were going and what we were doing. We just said we're going to the gardens. She kept repeating the same question over and over. We just kind of said we've already answered. And we came out. Getting to the car were a few tears. She wasn't sure about how she felt today coming out because she wanted to stay at home and read. And we just said, no, we're going out to have some fun, and if we have a really nice time, we can get an ice cream on the way home. And that sort of calmed her enough to get in the car.
No.
Mieke, let's go for a walk. Let's follow this path.
No.
Come on.
No, I'm not going.
Come on, Mieke.
No.
Mieke, what are you worried about? If we stay at home, Mieke feels really comfortable and that's her comfort zone. So by taking her out, we give her the chance to get out of her comfort zone and not sort of get her stuck in a rut. If we just stayed at home all the time, then when we do have to go out, it would be a lot harder than it was getting out today to come to the gardens where we go quite often. It's just a little bit, we don't want her to be stuck in the same place because she'd just stay at home in bed all day. Well, not bed, but in her room, in her safe space.
We're not bringing it home though, all right?
We're going back down.
Mieke, jump out of the car.
How are you feeling today?
Don't really know. I just felt nervous and anxious.
And how does it make your body feel?
A little bit jumpy and want to go home and that.
What we get with her is in public, she is able to function. She knows that you don't have a meltdown and people will look at her if she's pulling her hair out. So she tries really hard and she'll hold it all in and she'll behave appropriately until we're out of sort of the sight of people she doesn't know. So once we're back in the car, once we're at home is where we'll get those behaviours. Last night she was pulling her hair out and actually it's shorter on the front today because she's pulled all the front bits and ripped her fringe even more. So it's when she is back in her safe space that we get those behaviours, so no one would know that there was something up with her. She is able to function as a person.
Living living through the Christchurch earthquake and living in Christchurch and seeing the ramifications of that and the increased anxiety, seeing the anxiety and those statistics and people being concerned about it, I am pleased that it's been brought to people's awareness, and I'm pleased that we're seeing the pioneering things like we're seeing at Waimairi Primary School. And they're not the only ones doing that, they're just the ones we happen to, film at. There's an increasing number of primary schools that are focusing on dispositional learning, emotional intelligence, really, really well. So it's exciting. We just need to do more.
We wanted to focus on developing students' dispositions towards learning because that is what they're working on before they come to us. So New Zealand has a world-leading early childhood curriculum called Te Whāriki. And it's recently been revised, but it's been around for a long time, and it still has international study groups coming from overseas to look at how it works in the New Zealand context. And it's groundbreaking and really special because it was developed by child development experts rather than a panel of interested people. It's got sound neuroscience, sound child development underpinnings. And it is mainly about giving children a wonderful disposition towards learning. Yeah, I can do that. This is for me. Yep, learning. I'm all over it, which is what's needed for future success. So all we're trying to do is implement what research tells us about these little brains that walk in the door.
More and more now schools are focusing on pastoral care, but I think we've got a long way to go. So yeah, I think our exam system that we currently have that puts our teenagers under constant stress the whole year. I think when I went to school there were 2 periods of stress, mid-year exams and end-of-year exams. Under the current system, that level of stress is maintained throughout the whole year. So I think it's a perfect storm, but I don't think New Zealand manages well. I think our focus, very clearly what the research would support me with, is that our focus on only literacy and numeracy and cognitive intelligence in early childhood is probably the major contributor to our anxiety as a teenager. At that age, children should be playing. They should be learning to love life. They should be learning to love themselves. They should be learning to problem solve. That's what forms the basis. And the literature calls it social emotional aspects. So most early childhood curriculums in the world are social emotional curriculums because they're aimed at your limbic system. The frontal cortex, the brain on top of that you generally sort of move into for around 7, well, that's when it's centre stage. That's got reading and writing and repetitive patterns and logic and all the stuff that we think of as adults as being intelligent, but you don't get a more intelligent child by doing that early. But we have a culture in New Zealand that says, get those kids ready for school. Sit down, literacy, numeracy, what colour's this, what number comes after that. That limits children's creativity, it limits their emotional intelligence, and it makes them more vulnerable to anxiety and depression as teenagers.
You're actually building, from Te Whāriki, a sense of belonging, a sense of well-being, a sense of exploration, communication and contribution. So they are ways of being which actually help you learn and function. And they're what's built at early childhood before you get into the content. Before you hit the content, you've actually got to get the disposition towards it. This isn't a magic land of no anxiety, particularly post-quake. But we have reductions in the number of 5-year-olds wanting to run home during the first few weeks, which is something that happens in all schools, but it's been brought right down.
Have a think before you go one great thing that happened to you today. Either that you did for yourself or that you did for a friend. Don't need to tell me. Have a think in your own head. A great thing that helped your learning.
Here we have a mantra, we're only going to work on the things that we can change. We can't actually change society's rise in anxiety, but what we can do is make careful study of how children and adults react when anxious and learn to de-escalate, to calm. And it doesn't have to be like the whole program design, which I've talked about. It's a big part of it is preventative. So if we can design a way of transitioning to primary school that is all about reducing anxiety, which in turn raises learning, because the brain cannot learn when it's anxious, then we're addressing that. And then we've got a whole range of other micro-interventions that are just informed by what we know about anxiety for those children who still remain anxious. We've learned new and different ways of de-escalating anxiety-filled situations. We've learned about trigger points. We've learned about reading children. We've learned about the physiological manifestation of anxiety and how we can turn that around in kids and actually use that as a positive. We've even got a school dog here who's part of the deliberate strategy of being a place that actually can deal with anxiety in a really humane way.
I would hate to think that the message that parents get is you need play-based learning at 7 until 7 and then bang. Actually 7 to 8 should be like a transition time, but then by most children, by the time they're 8, are more into a cognitive learning base. So we can do repetitive patterns, reading and writing, because it's building on that disposition, not doing it instead of a disposition.
Show us some fabulous gymnastics.
The other thing that was great was finding that one thing that she was good at and wanted to excel at. We tried ballet first when she was little, and she gave up on that pretty quickly. But then we went to normal gymnastics. But she's always had a bit of rhythm, and when we found rhythm in gymnastics, it's a mouthful.
And her coach,
And her coach is like, she was fantastic.
Yeah, she's so good with her. She doesn't put up with anything. She's like, actually, you can do this.
She was strict, but she also understood where Mieke was not coming from, but how Mieke was. So Mieke's not doing gymnastics to learn gymnastics. She's doing it to get that confidence. She's doing it to get those life skills. It's not cheap, but it's worth every penny, because just seeing a change in her has made a world of difference, not just for her, but also for me. That's been one of the key things. Seeing that change.
When you get to know her, she's pretty awesome. It's just taking the time to get to know her and gaining her trust, and once you have that, she's actually pretty cool. I hope that she realises she's pretty awesome and she doesn't have to be like everybody else, and it's okay to be her, and she doesn't need to worry because she's got us.
And just to know that it doesn't matter if you fail at something. It doesn't matter if you can't do it on your first go.
Just keep trying.
Keep trying. And I believe we're enabling her to do that. So she's getting there.
Hopefully. So I just want her to be happy.
I do believe there's a long road ahead, though. I'm so proud of what she's already achieved, and she's only 8, so.
Yeah, as long as she's
especially compared to
happy.
where she was 4 years ago. So proud.
Attitude was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.